Good morning. Welcome to the Double Meal Dad Kitchen. I'm your host, the Double Meal Dad, and it's bright and early on a Sunday morning, and the kids still aren't out of bed. So we're going to make one of the Double Meal Dad's favorite things for the kids for a Saturday or Sunday breakfast, and that's a breakfast casserole. Remember, the concept of the Double Meal Dad is a simple one. How can I stretch my dollar farther by buying more quantities of the food that's on sale at our local grocery store, and then using it in multiple meals and getting different flavors so you don't feel like you're eating the same thing over and over again. And essentially, 2 meals in one, or the double meal. So if you got a chance to see our last video, we did pizza. We had all the kids here. We had some friends visiting, and we all made pizza. We're going to use some of those ingredients that we had left over from the pizza, and we're going to put this together. It's a real simple recipe. So when you come back, we're going to get started. So see you in a few minutes. So when we start with our breakfast casserole, we want to think about this in 5 layers. And you know, that's the general rule. The 5 layers are going to be our bread layer, they're going to be our meat layer, they're going to be our vegetables, our cheese, and then our egg topping. And I'll show you how to do that. That's a real straightforward and simple one. But you know, the Double Meal Dad was looking through the kitchen, and I noticed that all I had was onions, tomatoes, and jalapenos. So that's going to be my vegetable layer. What happens if you don't have any vegetables, or you don't have anything left over? Maybe you have a packet of frozen spinach. You can use that. Our vegetable layer can basically be anything we want it to. And if we don't have any vegetables, we can just skip the vegetable layers. Or if you don't like meat in your breakfast casserole, you can leave out the meat. We're fortunate in that yesterday when we had our pizza party, we had some leftover Italian sausage. So I'm just going to start over here by browning up some Italian sausage, and we had some breakfast sausage that was on sale at the grocery store yesterday when we went shopping. So I'm going to just take some breakfast sausage, and I'm going to brown that up with the Italian sausage. So I'm going to put 2 different kinds of meat. That's the whole fun of the Double Meal Dad, is that, you know, we don't have to be so specific with, grab a towel here real quick, we don't have to be so specific with the exact ingredients. Now, I will give you the general recipe for this, the meat layer, the vegetable layer. I want to show you this. This is a neat little tool that Mama Rose picked up at the Pampered Chef. It's got kind of a pinwheel thing there. It's where, if those of you who have tried to brown up meats before and had trouble kind of breaking them up, this is a really neat little tool to be able to break that up in there. So I'm just going to go ahead and get that started and get that brown. So we're going to use up that meat. We're going to clean out the refrigerator. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to use our bread layer. And typically when we're doing this, we want to use some type of casserole pan. So I've got a big 13-inch pan here. You could use a lasagna pan. You could use a smaller casserole dish if you wanted to. Depending on the size of your family, you can dial this up or down. It's very simple to do. I bought, in this case, I've got some local Texas-style biscuits in here. You could use French bread. Maybe you took some of the Gulaglia sauce we made and you made pasta for your family and you cut up some fresh French bread. That works outstanding in this recipe. So you got a little bit of leftover French bread, just put that at the bottom. Oh, I don't have anything. Well, guess what? You can use white bread. Just get yourself some of your white bread and use that as a bottom. We're just going to go ahead and pop this open, and I took a little bit of Pam and I sprayed the bottom because I don't want it to stick. And now I'm just going to take some of these biscuits, and again, the whole key here is I don't have to worry about, you know, is it fitting perfectly in the bottom. I just want to make a nice kind of crust at the bottom, and you see I put all of that in there. And we've got that there. Now the instructions call for baking it a little bit. I don't want to use these in the raw form because they'll be really doughy in my casserole. So I'm going to go ahead and blind bake this or pre-bake it. You know, the instructions are right on the packet. In this case, 400 degrees for about 10 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and 13 minutes, 10 to 13 minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in there. I've got a little leftover. I'll cook this up. Maybe I'll use this and make some small sandwiches for lunch. While that's going on, I'm going to go ahead and, remember my meat is browning back here, so I want to keep an eye on this. when this is all browned up, we're going to kind of make sure that we keep the oils and some of the fats in here so that we can cook up our vegetables. While that's going on, I'm going to go ahead and just very quickly cut up. I'm going to dice up some white onion. And notice this was left over from what we used for another meal, so I just had a half a white onion in there. So we're going to go ahead and cut this up. Let's put that aside so you can see the board. I'm going to dice up some jalapeno, cut those tips off. Now these I won't put in my soup bag. I know you're all looking at me going, put it in the soup bag. No, I'm not going to put the spicy jalapeno in there. Maybe if Mom and Rose and I were just eating the soup, we'd do that. We like our soup spicier. If I'm making a hot and sour soup, I could do that. But for this, I'm just going to cut up some jalapenos. And the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut up a little bit of Roma tomatoes, which happen to also be on sale. Now, here's a little trick about tomatoes. Remember what we said about our sharp knives. If you haven't seen our video on how to cut up a chicken, the first part of that video has got a whole walkthrough about how to sharpen your knives at home. If you don't want to sharpen your knives, I think I put a note down in there. Use your local hardware store. We go to our Ace Hardware store probably about every week. Yesterday we actually dropped off a couple more knives. So the Double Meal Dad does follow his own advice here. We dropped off a couple of knives. Make sure you have sharp knives. Even if you have a sharp knife, cutting a tomato can sometimes be a little difficult with the skin because the tomato may, crush down. So a little trick is, instead of using a cutting knife, use a bread knife. And a bread knife will go right through a tomato very simply. It's a very easy way to cut up a tomato. So if you're having trouble, maybe your knife's not as sharp, just go ahead and use a bread knife. It's a neat little trick to use to cut up tomatoes. Now I'm not going to cut these up too small. I want to save all that great tomato flavor. The other thing we want to make sure is that if we have a tomato that's got a lot of water in it, we don't want to use all of that water. That'll make our casserole kind of soggy. So there we go. We've got all of our vegetables cut up. Put that aside. I'll put my knife aside. Really, that's it. That's all I had to cut for this recipe. The meat's going to brown up here. I'm going to pull this off. And now I'm going to go ahead and start to make my egg recipe. So this is almost completely done. And now I'm going to go ahead and make my egg recipe. Again, I'm going to put the general rules or the general recipe for this on the internet, but the egg recipe can be dialed up or dialed down. So we have a very big family here at the Double Meal Dad. We've got 2 grandkids living with us and a few of our kids living with us. So we need to cook for a lot of people. So I'm going to use, in this recipe, I'm going to use 12 eggs. Again, if you've got a smaller family, maybe you're going to use a small square cooking dish. You're not going to use a 12 eggs, you're going to use 6 eggs. You like it a little bit thicker as far as the recipe is concerned. You can try to get this done a little quicker for you so you can see what we got going on here. And there we go. We went through 12 eggs in a heartbeat. Here at the Double Meal Dad kitchen. So we've got our 12 eggs. We're going to get our mixer, our beaters here. We're just going to mix that up. So now I've got all my eggs incorporated. If you're trying to cut back on your cholesterol, not a problem. Better eggs or egg whites, anything of that nature. You can cut this recipe and cut the cholesterol out with that. We're going to add a little bit of fresh ground pepper, a little bit of salt to taste. The Double Meal Dad's a big fan of oregano, so I'm going to add about a teaspoon, a little bit more than a teaspoon of oregano. I'm going to add a little thyme. This just happens to be my recipe for this. If you're making a Mexican flavored casserole, use some cumin in there, or use some Mexican oregano. It's got a little bit different flavor than Italian oregano. Mama Rose and I make our own fresh cayenne pepper. Fresh cayenne pepper, Mama Rose grows them in her garden, so We just put them in the oven for about a couple hours at 180 degrees and let them dry out. And then we just put them in the blender and mix them up. A little coffee grinder, you can use that if you got one of those. Just be careful, make sure you rinse it out really good, otherwise your coffee will be really spicy when you grind up your coffee. Okay, that's almost completely brown there. Now I'm going to add about a half a pint of heavy whipping cream. And remember what we said, you know, if you look at Double Meal Dad and you go, Double Meal Dad, that seems really rich. Yeah, well, there's a lot of flavor in this. So if you're trying to cut back on your fat intake, you don't have to use heavy whipping cream. You can use skim milk. You can use 2%. I'm just going to go ahead and put about half of that in there. I just want to give it a nice, good flavor and give it an opportunity to get creamy. You can dial it up, dial it back. Again, I'll have the recipe. It's about a half a pint to 12 eggs. If you use 6 eggs, obviously you're going to cut that in half. So we're good. We've got everything here. For cheese, I'm going to use that leftover Italian pizza cheese from making the pizza last night. When we come back, I'm going to go ahead and put this all together for you, and we're going to get it in the oven. So we'll see you in a couple minutes. Okay, we're ready to assemble our breakfast casserole. I'm going to start. I just pulled out the biscuits. So remember, these biscuits were, uncooked. I wanted to blind bake them a little bit, get them a little toasty, because we're only going to cook them for about 30-35 minutes, and they would be doughy if I didn't pre-cook them. If you're using a French toast, if you're using like a French bread, not a problem. You don't have to. You're not going to pre-cook those. You're just going to put that at the bottom, or a white bread. You're just going to put that at the bottom. Here's our beautiful meat that we've roasted up. So we just put it in the frying pan and we browned it all up and everything. So I'm just going to kind of put that out all over, make that nice and even there. Then all I did is I had my frying pan, right? Browned up my meat, and I don't have a lot of vegetables today. I like to put mushrooms and green peppers in here, but I didn't have it, so not a big deal. We're just going to go ahead, and then I just took a little bit of the fat that was in there that was left from the meat. I cooked up my onions and my jalapeno. I just put a splash of olive oil in there to just let it continue to cook. I'm just going to go ahead and put that all around on top of my meat. Again, I'm spreading this out here so that I have some good flavor. And you can, as I said, you can use anything you want as far as flavoring from vegetable-wise. If you want to use spinach, go ahead and get some spinach. If you want to use, I'm going to use some of my fresh tomatoes. Love fresh tomatoes. So we're going to go ahead and put a bunch of these fresh tomatoes that I cut up earlier in here. Remember those tricks that I showed you for that? So now we've got all of our vegetables in here. Next step we're going to do is you want to put the cheese in here. If we put the cheese on the top, we're going to melt a lot of that off. So I'm just going to go ahead and put in the cheese. And we're just going to use all the rest of this pizza cheese from the pizza we made last night. And we made that beautiful pizza with, I hope you got a chance to try that. If you haven't seen the video, I'll put the link to the video in the YouTube links in the information below. So you got a recipe there. You've got the walkthrough, the step-by-step process in the video, so you get to see that. That's all we're going to do. We're just going to put a little cheese there. We're set, and now here's our egg mixture that we've all mixed up with our eggs and our heavy whipping cream. We're just going to ladle that right on top. You're making kind of like a quiche. The only difference here is you're not really worried about this rising. There's no, nobody has to be quiet around the house. We're just going to it's going to sink down into all the nooks and crannies there. It's going to make that biscuit nice and fluffy as it gets through there. It's going to coat it with the eggs, kind of like making a French toast. I'll go ahead and remember that I had it in the oven, so I'm going to shake it up here with my mitts on. There we go. Again, if you were using a French bread or something like that, it wouldn't be hot. I blind baked my biscuits. So I'm going to go ahead and throw that in the oven. About 30 to 35 minutes. We're looking for a nice brownness on top of it. And guess what? I had 6 leftover biscuits. So I'm going to go ahead and bake those up. And this afternoon, maybe I'll a little ham, a little cheese on top of those, and make some sandwiches for later today. A few more minutes. We'll about 30 to 35 minutes. We'll open this up. We got the oven set at 350, and I'll cut a slice and we'll show you what it looks like. So, see you in a few minutes. Well, it's been about 30-35 minutes for our breakfast casserole. I'm going to go ahead and pull that out of the oven now and show you what that looks like. Now, the last couple minutes, I just put it on broil. That's just my personal preference. Mama Rose likes a little toasty flavor on the top there, so I just put it on broil. I'm going to go ahead and cut this up. You may want to let it sit for a minute or two. If you do, that'll just give it some time to stiffen up a little bit. You want to be careful. Don't eat this right away. It's going to be very hot, so if you're serving the kids, don't have them eat it too quickly there. I'm just going to go ahead and cut a piece out of here. Make sure I get all the way down. Get that good biscuit at the bottom of that. Speaking of biscuits, 13 minutes. I cooked up the rest of those biscuits over there. I'm going to grab myself a plate here. Myself a little scoop of that. And you can see just a really well cooked through, nice and firm. Go ahead and use maybe some of our local Big Daddy's hot sauce or some bubblegum hot sauce. Listen, I hope you had a good time with me today. Again, I was just showing you a quick little breakfast casserole that we like to make here in the Double Meal Dad kitchens. Great way to use up some of the stuff you've cooked through the week. Really nice breakfast, hearty breakfast for the family, and kind of breaks up the monotony of the waffles and the French toast and the cereal. So give it a try. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you have a great day, and we'll see you next time on the Double Meal Dad. Take care, y'all.